Three terrifying beings with large horns, pointed ears, black wings, and red skin are called demons, known as horrendous creatures that lead humans to corruption, turning them evil. However, real demons are different from the creatures in the stories. They live hidden among humanity, feeding on human desires, evolve to be beautiful and charming, and more charismatic to better extract human desires. Someone hypothesizes that any random person on the street could be a demon, where a man standing among other people shows his evil red eyes. In a subway train where passengers seem relaxed during their journey while using their cell phones, teenagers in school uniforms laugh and curse. While someone says the world is full of demons, he carries a sign about demons, asserting that many people are consumed by sinful desires. A man listens while sitting, appearing impatient with what the other says. A voice questions whether they should look for someone who was in an accident last night. This person says on the phone there is no need as they will use the subway. He then hangs up when the voice on the other end says they are worried about him. On the train, the passengers seem relaxed. When someone comments that Hyunshin sometimes uses public transport to get to work, and that his ability is a problem in crowded places, but he needs to put himself in these situations to remember who he is. The man called Hyunshin complains it's not his lucky day, while the old man yells at him. Passengers look at the situation, saying the man in the suit is indeed very handsome. Irritated, the dark-haired man says the old man in front of him is drawing too much attention to them, inconsequentially bothering the fair-skinned man with the old man's loud voice. Hyunshin stands up, complaining he should call someone named Jae-yoon, when suddenly a brown-haired woman asks if the man is okay. He then smiles maliciously. With very irritated red eyes, he tells the woman to mind her own business. Then he wonders why all these irritating things are happening to him that day. The woman asks one last time before turning to leave if the man is okay, when the crazy old man asks who the hell that woman is. As he stretches out his arm to grab the woman by the back, someone grabs the crazy old man's arm. Then the old man screams in pain, while the irritated man grabs his arm and glares at the young brown-haired woman, who looks back confused upon hearing the old man's scream. With scary red eyes, the young man asks what the woman had said. Confused, the brown-haired woman says she just asked if the man was really okay, while the young man continues to hold the old man's wrist tightly. Not being answered, just stared at by the young man. Nervous, the woman averts her gaze from the young man in front of her and starts to speak. The man turns his head, nervous to realize only now that he stared at her for too long and didn't notice. His red, nervous eyes look at the woman in front of him, who again starts to speak. Then the young woman asks if the man could let go of the crazy old man's arm. Disbelieving, the young man's eyes turn purple when he asks what the woman had said. Again, the woman who has the man's attention tells him to let go of the old man's arm, who was screaming in agony from pain. He asks why, since the crazy old man would be aggressive with the woman, being answered by her that she was against violence as a response to other violence. The man's authoritative eyes turned red again when the young woman thanks him for his help but asks him to let the old man go. The man's response was just to stare at the woman in front of him, being stared back at by the woman's beautiful brown eyes. When finally the young man lets go of the crazy old man's arm, saying that the woman in front of him was not lying. With a painful expression, the old man finally has his arm free. Happy and smiling, the woman thanks the man in front of her. Still staring at her, the young man asks the girl to answer him a question. But two guards interrupt his speech, pointing at the man. However, the two guards were behind the crazy old man. Angry, the guards affirm they saw everything that was happening there through the recordings after receiving a complaint. The men ask the old man to leave the car while the young man looks at the woman who was smiling while using her cell phone. Then she notices the man's gaze, and again asserts she is against violence, when she shows the complaint she had made to the guards, affirming she never said she would let the crazy old man go unpunished. The man then just stares at her, not understanding anything about that smiling woman, looking back and seeing the guards taking the crazy old man out of the car, while the old man also claims to be a victim, showing the injury the young man caused him, pointing to the young man and complaining that he had tried to break his wrist. However, the young man just stares when someone states that the young man's eyes had a special power. Regardless of who the person was, anyone who looked into his eyes would fall in love with him. And it was no different with the crazy old man who stared at him. The young man claims that he would indeed break his wrist if he said anything more. The guards carried the crazy man away while he invited the dark-haired young man for tea. The train doors then closed. Nervous, the young man complains that he needed to get off at this station, but now with an angry look at the situation. The city was bustling early in the morning. The sun shone on a plastic surgery building. A young man with light hair said someone was late while he smiled charmingly. The dark-haired young man just stares at the one who said he had rescheduled his appointment. The two just stare at each other while the brown-haired man waits for the dark-haired man's response. But the young man with black hair just asks the young man in front of him to find someone for him. Complaining that someone named Mayon would be more apt for the task, the brown-eyed young man asks who the person that needs to be found is. Already irritated, the dark-haired young man imagines how the man called Mayon would react to his request. Threateningly, the dark-haired man says that the mentioned man should never know about that request. Then he is bombarded with several questions about the woman the dark-haired man had no idea how to answer, saying he had only met her on the subway that morning, and that was the only information he had. Then asked about the woman's appearance, but the dark-haired man also didn't know how to answer. In disbelief, the young man with light hair questions why the dark-haired man wants to find someone he doesn't remember. The young man just responds that there is something he needs to confirm, while opening a room with some computers, complaining that it doesn't matter if he remembers the woman's appearance or not. He says that if they run into each other again. As the young man enters the room, the brown-haired woman looks open-mouthed at the man. Shocked, he stares at the woman in front of him whom he was just looking for. The young man then says that even if he didn't remember the young woman's appearance, he would be able to recognize her immediately. This while staring at the woman in pink in front of him. Someone says that there are 7 human emotions known as the 7 deadly sins, and that in the past, demons born from these emotions roamed around satisfying their hunger for their sins. They went to all corners of battlefields, to the fanciest social events, even to the cruelest black market events. But as time went by, the great civilizations disappeared. Thus, these demons had to find another way to survive, always aiming to survive as long as possible, in an efficient and profitable way. So they got specialized jobs and gradually adapted to the human world. White hands closed a door. When 2 employees greeted the so-called Dr. Kim, being asked by the women if the man was going to the break room, the girls stared at the doctor, smitten, while continuing a conversation with him about where they would eat. The young man then wishes them a good lunch, and the smitten employees thank him. The break room was a place where some demons gathered in search of human desires. Someone announces their entrance into the room, where 3 handsome demons were drinking blood stored in bags. Dr. Kim looks at the situation in the room and complains that he had asked the demons to clean up after their meals. Shin Mayan, a red-haired demon who consumes greed, apologizes while typing on his cell phone. A dark-haired man asks where the dark-haired young man is while handing over the blood bag he had just drunk, being answered that he was in the middle of a consultation. Yubitan, a demon who consumes envy, says he heard that the man in the consultation had used the subway. Someone asks why the man was taking the subway again while opening a blood bag, recalling they had to fetch him the last time because a crowd had surrounded him, while pouring the blood into a white cup. Kim Ji-yoon, a demon who consumes gluttony, drank the blood from the cup while saying he didn't think so. The redhead drank the blood straight from the bag while lamenting that the man in the consultation couldn't see blood. They then complained that it has been 2 years. Lee Jung-won, a blonde demon who consumes wrath, asks if there is any remedy to fix something. While sucking on a lollipop, someone asks Lee how such a remedy could exist. Then a discussion starts because of the insult the red-haired demon made to the blonde one, spilling blood all over the Leviathan's clothes, who looked bored at the situation. While Kin wished there really was a remedy to solve the situation, the brown-haired woman nervously stared at something in front of her, the surgery plan that was presented, a clinic specializing in plastic surgery. The dark-haired man, the subject of the other demon's conversation, sat on a menacing throne, staring at something in front of him. A demon who consumes pride and smiled maliciously. But now with a serious expression and a white coat, the demon Park Hyun-shin stared at something in front of him. This something was the nervous girl he had met earlier in the subway. The demon then asks the name of the beautiful woman in front of him. Ju Aina nervously responds, quickly realizing that the man was a doctor. The silence between the two continues when the girl mentally comments that this profession did not suit the man at all. Lucifer then becomes irritated while the beautiful lady does not understand the reason. With frightening eyes, the doctor asks what size she would like her breasts to be. Thoughtful, the girl hesitantly replies that she would like a D cup. Sarcastically, the man opens a beautiful white smile and comments that she should consider a smaller size. Angry, the woman questions the demon doctor's ability. The two then just stare at each other, challenging one another. Peeved, the dark-haired man complains that the girl has been saying bad things about him since earlier. Not understanding, the woman questions the doctor's words and wonders what is happening when the doctor just stares at her angrily. The man mentally comments on the earlier situation and how the girl did not react as he expected, wondering why the woman was not affected by his eyes nor discouraged by his words, and that the woman was not even a demon to be able to do such a thing. He thought about all this while staring at her without understanding. Then the doctor catches the young woman's attention by asking why she had asked him that question earlier. The young woman asks what question she had asked and remembers the question in question. Nervously, the chocolate-haired woman begins to speak. She recounts that when she had a difficult moment, when a little younger, someone promptly offered help. Smiling, she says she thought the demon was in the same situation. The doctor just stares at the one in front of him. Then the doctor responds that people normally wouldn't think of that, making the woman shiver when he asked her why she wanted to have that surgery. Hesitantly, the young woman begins her explanation, and with a serious expression, she says it is for a personal reason. But she needed to have the surgery and asked if the man would do it. Attentive, he looks at the young woman when he nervously states that he won't be able to do the surgery, shocking the woman in front of him. Exasperated, the woman asks the reason while the dark-haired man fiddles with something on the right side of his desk. He then stretches out his arm with a calendar in hand, showing it to the woman. The doctor asks the woman to take a look and questions if any of the marked days are free. The woman then points to a free day on Monday, claiming it is empty, being answered that it was the doctor's day off and that his schedule was full. Shaken, the young woman asks when the doctor will be free, receiving the answer that probably only next year, shaking the young woman even more. The doctor then offers her an immediate appointment at another clinic, but the demon doctor smiles exaltedly, saying that the young woman came there only because the young demon was the best in his field. In shock, the young woman asks the doctor to wait when he asks her to leave. The sun shone brightly through the windows of a cafe when someone squeezed a coffee cup between their fingers in anger. The young Ina, enraged, remembered the hateful doctor she had met earlier. With furious eyes, she remembers the doctor's schedule and says she needs to have the surgery before someone returns. Desperate, she fiddles with her cell phone, claiming she will find another place to have the surgery, furiously saying that even if the dark-haired doctor begs, she will not be operated on by him. The doctor was then in the middle of surgery when he cut someone's skin and blood flowed. Without understanding, the nurse stared at the doctor in front of her. With shock in his eyes, the man trembled as he heard the nurse calling him, followed by the man ordering them to continue with the work. The nurses praised everyone's good work when the doctor quickly left the room, and with hurried steps, he walked down the clinic corridor. Dr. Kim was looking for something on his computer when his attention was drawn to the man who called his name, questioning what young Lucifer had come to do in his office, where he states he had just come out of surgery, and that for just a second, he was fine even after seeing the blood. The brown-haired young man stared at the one in front of him, and he shouted in surprise at how that had happened. He also said that his hands started trembling again when the disgust of seeing blood returned. Seriously, he thought that even if only for a second, his appetite for blood came back to the surface. With crossed arms, Dr. Park said that he would have to find the cause of it. Thoughtfully, the young brown-haired man considered that the temporary relapse of his friend might be the remedy the others had mentioned earlier. He asked the demon if he had done anything that day that he didn't usually do. While working on the computer, Dr. Kim thought that the effect might have appeared and disappeared, because perhaps he had come into contact with the cause, and then it disappeared. It could be something similar to the situation when humans don't take their medication. The doctor said that just in case the dark-haired man thought of something, staring seriously at the friend in front of him. Then the demon commented that another unusual thing had happened too, shocking the friend by saying that someone he had met earlier had not been affected by his power. Astonished, Mr. Kim asked why the man hadn't said that earlier. Paralyzed, the brown-haired doctor asked if that person was the one the demon had asked him to find, being only stared at by the dark-haired man. The sky was a beautiful shade of blue with few clouds. When someone asked if the dark-haired man thought the woman who was now sitting dejectedly in a chair was the cure for his problem, he then replied that he wasn't sure about that while the girl stared at her cell phone, which now started to show a call, when the dark-haired man said he would find out if the cure was that beautiful brown-haired girl in pink clothes, the same one who now had a doubtful expression, while the man's dark eyes stared at her. He commented that the girl was dressed the same way she was on her previous visit to the clinic. The dark-haired man put his hand in his pocket, which exuded something red, while listening to the woman's explanation. This red thing emanated from a beautiful necklace, with an oval red stone pendant surrounded by silver ornaments that framed the stone. The woman questioned the man's words while he wondered if it was the woman's voice. The doctor stated that he had something to say while thinking it wasn't the woman's perfume either. But the girl got irritated when the doctor only said that she must be in a hurry to have the surgery. Feeling insulted, the woman became exasperated and questioned the man. With fierce eyes, she asked if the doctor was just playing with her, getting even more irritated upon realizing that the man wasn't listening to her. He affirmed that he was listening to her when he surprised her. The beautiful girl stared at the beautiful red necklace in front of her. With sparkling eyes, she commented that the jewel reminded her of blood. The pendant then hung between the red eyes of the young demon. Fascinated, the young woman stared intently at the necklace, being very close to the man, backing away upon realizing she was too close. Then the girl asked what this necklace had to do with the situation, while the man thought to himself that he had found the cause, and that it was the eyes of the one in front of him. With the necklace shattering between his fingers, he said he didn't know why, but that he could find out the reason later. Irritated, the woman asked if the man had called her there just to look at the necklace. With his head down, the man stood up and announced that he was going to kiss her, tormenting the young girl who had no reaction after the doctor's words. Feeling pressured, the woman asked what he was doing and told the doctor not to come closer. Already very close to the girl, the man claimed that if she looked him in the eyes and refused the kiss, he would do something for her. With malicious eyes, he said he would perform the surgery if she could refuse him. Too close to the girl, who was sitting without reaction, the doctor said he would test if his ability would work after the supposed kiss. Embarrassed, the owner of the beautiful eyes looked at the man in front of her, wondering what was happening while the man's challenging eyes stared at her. When their faces were very close to each other, she realized that the man would really kiss her, while he held her by the waist. When she finally managed to react to the doctor's action, she pushed the demon's face away, claiming to like someone else. The doctor turned his face in disbelief at his first rejection, while the brown-haired woman realized that she had almost let the demon kiss her. Looking at her with interested eyes, he caught the attention of the woman he had tried to kiss seconds before. With his head down, the doctor told the girl that she could start working there the next day. Not understanding, the young woman asked the reason for the offer, and she also questions the reason for the doctor's informality, who says he talks like that with all his employees. The doctor then says he will operate on the woman, and she questions what that has to do with the offer to work at the clinic. Without an answer, the dark-haired man turns his face nervously. He then says that if she becomes an employee at the establishment, he can fit her into his schedule. The woman then complains that she already has a job, but she seems thoughtful upon learning her salary and that she can do what she wants at least when the doctor calls her. Convinced, the doctor comments that it is a great deal, being questioned why this sudden change in attitude, concluding that the man must have fallen in love with her after everything. The doctor complains that, of course, she won't get all this for free, and asks the young woman to just do as he says. Then the woman asks what she should do. Nervously, she wonders what the doctor will ask. Mentally, she comments that she will have to be bold and unshakable, causing the demon to smile maliciously, who quickly asks if he can continue talking, being answered with the woman's confirmation. He then comments that he cannot see blood for personal reasons, and the woman pays close attention to what the man is saying, asking how the man operates on people, being answered that the demon endures what he sees, but he has been getting tired and therefore has a certain limit of surgeries. The doctor leans on his large desk while continuing to talk to the young woman. With a firm look, he stares at the woman. Then he comments that when he looks at her, he feels better. With shock in her eyes, the young woman stares at him and asks what kind of nonsense the doctor is talking about, claiming that the man is really in love with her. Proudly, she states that the doctor should give up on her while he considers just locking her up and persuading her. But her confirmation surprised him, looking awkwardly at her as she now saw ways to comply with what was asked. Then the young Lucifer said that the woman just said she didn't believe in him. Awkwardly, she thinks of a way to say something. With her hand behind her ear, the young woman says that it seems the man really needs her help. In shock, the doctor stared at her upon hearing the word help, gritting his teeth in anger. The young woman then extends her hand towards the man, saying that she will be under his care until her surgery. But the doctor stood up and ignored the one in front of him, just turning his head back to comment that the young woman's hours start at 9 a.m. The woman's reaction was just to stare at him awkwardly. When she was left alone in the fancy room, questioning the man's behavior that she didn't understand, the sun shone again through the windows of the large clinic. A smiling employee asked someone's schedule, when the chocolate-haired woman couldn't answer. Then the young woman announced she was Dr. Park's new assistant. The employee then looked at her with a look of disdain. Suspicious, the owner of the beautiful curls questioned the face the employee made upon hearing her response and called her to follow. Knocking on the door, the employee announced the presence of Miss Ju Ina. Excited, the employee opened the door with a beautiful smile, followed by the young lady, coming across a handsome doctor sitting and working on his computer, with his attention fully on the computer. The girl with beautiful eyes stared at the man. When the man told the woman to get back to work, the dark-haired woman glared at the brown-haired young woman before leaving the dark-haired woman wondering why the woman looked at her that way. Then the doctor asked why the woman was standing there. He ordered the girl to close the door and walk over to it, showing her a room he had furnished with everything she would need. Amazed, the woman looked around the room, noticing the darkness of the place and the lack of primary colors, wondering if that was what the man liked. Then the man held the woman's face by the chin, making her look at him, and the two stared at each other. The young woman then asked if the doctor was going out for surgery, receiving confirmation from him. With a serious expression, the demon said that if the others showed up, the girl should just ignore them, receiving only the woman's confirmation. He then slowly let go of the woman's face, and smiling, the doctor told the girl to take a break, leaving her behind with a certain understanding. Then smiling victoriously, the young woman states that the doctor has left, celebrating that she is now free. Excited, she has the idea to take a look around the room. But looking on her boss's desk, the young woman noticed something on the desk. Rummaging through the things, the girl says it's not fun and that she should snoop around the other rooms. When she accidentally bumps into something, she turns her head in surprise. Looking at the floor, the young woman notices she knocked over a small picture frame. Questioning if she had really knocked it over, she picks up the frame to look at it, and she sees the photo of an extremely beautiful woman sitting in her boss's chair. The young employee comments that it's a woman in the photo, a very beautiful girl. Then she wonders if it might be Dr. Park's girlfriend. Nervously, the young woman starts to suspect that it might be an ex-girlfriend because the photo was turned over. Too busy wondering how to place the frame back on the desk, the young woman didn't notice the presence behind her. The man behind her smiles. Then he tells the woman that the photo was originally face down, and relieved, the woman thanks him for the information. But upon seeing the red-haired man behind her, she stares at him. Desperate, the woman curses and immediately asks who the red-haired man beside her is. She nervously stares at Dr. Mayan, who, with curious eyes, comments that it's her. Not understanding, the girl stares at him when the man calls her the so-called remedy. The redhead then introduces himself and says he is a doctor at the clinic, while the young woman looks at him suspiciously. Nervously, the beautiful brown-haired woman also introduces herself. The doctor then asks if they should shake hands after having his hand extended for a long time to the young woman. When they shook hands, the young man emanated a red aura. Not understanding, the young woman stared at their hands and looked the demon in the eyes. The same red-eyed man. Shin Mayan is a mammon, a demon of greed. Each species of demon needs to consume a different emotion, and each has a different method for seducing humans. A mammon channels his abilities through his hands. That is, any human who touches his hands will be captivated by him. Regardless of age or gender, this applies to everyone. So, to the red-haired demon, humans were nothing more than entirely replaceable objects. However, the redhead seemed shocked by something he just saw, looking ahead and seeing two demons crouched in front of a door, eavesdropping on whoever was inside, questioning the actions of the two and making them shiver. Whispering, they comment that a patient returned to Dr. Park's office. The redhead complains that many patients return to see the man. But this time, Hyunjin asked the patient to return. In shock, the redhead stops fiddling with his phone, full of messages from others. He asked why, but neither demon knew the answer. Influenced, the redhead pushed the blonde at the door to see who was in the office. The three whispered restlessly about the girl they were seeing in front of them, wanting to see more and more of the woman, when they noticed the deadly stare of the pride demon. The demons, who were previously restless, were now frozen in fear by the man's gaze. So they closed the door when the girl inside the room asked if the man was listening to her. The two demons left the place, while the redhead continued to stand at the door. The Leviathan questioned the demon as he continued to stand there, with a face consumed by greed, the emotion that Mayun consumed. And the pride demon's warning only encouraged him to investigate further. Back in the present, the beautiful girl stared into his eyes, while the man questioned why she was there. Confused, the girl wondered if she should speak or not. Consequently, remembering the last thing the doctor had told her about the others, then the young woman says she cannot tell the reason for being there, claiming it's a secret, and also asking the man to let go of her hand so she could work. The redhead then finally realized that the girl was talking to him normally and had even asked him to let go of her hand. He grabbed the young woman's hand again. Nervous, the man questioned if the woman was feeling anything by holding his hand. Mentally claiming it was embarrassing, the man asked the young woman if her heart was racing or felt tight, or if she even seemed different in her eyes. The woman just stared at him and finally answered that she wasn't that religious and that she was very sorry. In shock, the redhead just wondered what the hell the pride demon had brought to the clinic. That's when the operation began, the so-called operation to seduce Juina. The first challenger was the demon Bitan, the Leviathan of envy, who seduces through his voice, even with small sounds. But young Ina seemed doubtful about the man's first words, saying if that weird sound was all he had to say. Bitan, the Leviathan demon of envy, failed miserably. The second challenger was the demon Li, Satan of wrath, seducing through his cuteness. At first, he managed to win over the protagonist's charisma, but soon felt insulted after the woman questioned if the man was in elementary school. Jungwon failed miserably and left the room furious, being dragged out by the demon of envy. The third challenger was the demon Kim, Beelzebub of gluttony, who seduces through pheromones. However, it didn't work on the young woman, because she couldn't stand strong smells. Jaehyun was defeated miserably. The noises were loud when a man appeared in front of the room. A voice asked what the boys were trying again, while greed held the young woman's hand. The great demon of pride looked at the people inside the room while leaning against the door. With a deadly stare, the man asked how long the doctors had been entering and leaving his office while he wasn't there. He then ordered everyone to disappear from his office while they awkwardly looked around. Everyone left the place, while the young woman remained seated, watching them leave. The brown-haired man commented on how the doctor must have rushed back to the room, because he was even sweating from the hurry. Lastly, he warned her to be careful, because at any moment, one of the others could easily steal her from him, while the redhead said he would pass by again later. The demon then just looked ahead. When everyone left, he commented to the woman that he had told her something while she stared at him seated, to just ignore the others who show up there. The young woman commented that she ignored them, but they kept showing up, while the man noticed that the girl had messed with his desk. The doctor asked if the girl thought that now that she had talked a bit with the others, they had become some sort of friends, and said they wouldn't see each other again after the surgery, and the woman reaffirmed that they entered the place on their own. Doubtful, she stared at him and asked what the man meant. Then the doctor simply said for her to do only what she was told and nothing more. The woman turned her back on the demon and said she would do only what he asked and that he shouldn't call her unless it was for work. The doctor stared at the girl until the moment she entered her room and closed the door. Looking cautiously at the door of the room the young woman had just entered. Again the sun shone over the large clinic, and the young doctor looked irritated at something. It was at his assistant, who wore a mask over her mouth and headphones to ignore her boss. The man removed the headphone from the girl, and angrily she questioned the doctor's action. When the doctor complained that the girl with beautiful eyes still had work to do, angrily, the young woman slapped her boss's hand and stared at him with a beautiful but furious face. Also angry, the doctor questioned if she would continue acting that way. Sunlight entered through the window, illuminating the room. Time passed, and someone asked if it was enough, while another voice said no. The The young woman complained that the doctor had been staring at her for longer than usual, and the young dark-haired man said he would need more time that day. Complaining, the girl said that the doctor always did what he wanted, and he retorted. Tired of the situation, the woman turned her face, saying that was enough, claiming it was ridiculous when she suddenly slipped on a lollipop left there by the boys the previous day, and panicked about slipping. She looked at the man she had been arguing with moments before, and realized that her boss wouldn't try to catch her. Thinking of various conclusions about what her fall would lead to, she prepared for the impact with the floor that never came, because she fell into a chair and not on the floor. Disbelieving, she looked at the chair beneath her, certain there hadn't been a chair there before, when the man just turned to leave, but a hand grabbed his arm. The woman claimed her legs were weak and asked for the doctor's help to get up. She thought she was so worried that she didn't even notice the chair was there while staring at a cup high on a cabinet. She stretched her arm to reach the cup at the top while thinking that her boss annoyed her because he saw her falling and did nothing to save her. When a tall arm finally reached the cup at the top of the cabinet and handed her the cup, the handsome, envious demon handed her the white cup while staring at her with his beautiful black eyes. The young woman thanked him for the help and took the cup he offered, thinking he was one of the guys who had been in her office the day before, wondering what the name of the one who grabbed the cup for her was. The demon then said his name to the young woman, catching her attention. He also commented that he knew she was helping Dr. Park. The girl commented that it just happened while she remembered the other guy who bothered her the previous day. She wondered mentally if she could tell these things to the dark-haired man in front of her. However, she thinks that she was not the one who brought up this topic first, with a bored and justified expression. The boy with a smile on his face asks the young woman to take good care of the proud demon. Surprised, the young woman affirmed that she would take care of the mentioned demon, and even more surprised by the beautiful voice of the man beside her. The man who smiled friendly at the woman then says that the man in question is someone very important to him. Nervously, she confirms that the two must be really close. With hot coffee in his cup, the young man comments that the two have been friends for a long time. Surprised, the young woman then asks if they all are the same age. Thoughtful, the young man says he's not sure about that question. Confused, the woman questions mentally how they have been friends for a long time, but don't know their ages. She sips her coffee, thinking that it must be the case with people nowadays. Also surprised that the young man looks scary but in the end knows how to talk. Concluding that he might be a good person while looking at her reflection in the coffee. Happy, she announces that she will return to her room and wishes the young man to enjoy his coffee. When the man calls her with a malicious smile on his lips, the young woman looks back and asks what the man wants, but he just stares at her with a slight smile on his face. Even in dreams, the demon could seduce people through his sweet and devilish voice. The young demon was a Leviathan. The employees seemed dissatisfied with the presence of young Ina, because she received the attention of all the demons in the clinic. And that was the emotion that the employees felt that fed the Leviathan demon. Curious, the young woman asks what the doctor wanted. He then comments that it's more fun to work there with the girl's presence, and he hoped she would stay there for a long time, since the young brown-haired woman caused envy in the other employees, and envy was the sin that the demon of envy fed on. Impatiently, the beautiful young woman walks through the corridors, stating to herself that even if Dr. Yoon likes her presence, she will stay there only until her surgery is done, commenting that it's better not to get involved with the other doctors, just as Dr. Park had told her not to do. Thus, opening the door to her office, and being greatly startled to find the young dark-haired demon in the middle of the room, asking where she had been. The young woman then claims that the doctor's surgery was extremely quick. The man then states that it has only been 2 hours since he left the room, and the young woman defends herself by saying that she only went to make tea, turning her back on the surgeon and complaining that it's not like she's in a prison. With crossed arms, the doctor stared at her, while thinking about his progress in the operating rooms, because he no longer felt uncomfortable seeing blood in the first 2 days, even being praised by his colleagues, and he didn't feel any discomfort seeing blood. He questioned if it was because of the young woman in front of him, because he wasn't sure about it. The doctor was annoyed by many unforeseen events that only worsened the scenario to uncover why the young woman caused this effect and how it was being produced. Then the doctor calls the young woman's attention and asks if she has plans after work. The young woman comments that she will go out to dinner with a friend. Then the boss orders her to cancel the dinner. In disbelief, she asks why, and the young man replies that the two of them need to go somewhere, soon being told that the place was the young doctor's house. In shock, the woman questions the place they are going, not believing that the place is the man's house. Then the young woman asks why the hell she would go to her boss's house, and he says he needs to test something. In shock at the word test, used by the man, and imagining perverse things, the woman freezes. She questions what kind of experiment that would be and why it couldn't be done at the clinic. But the man gets irritated, saying it can't be done there, and the girl insists. The two start arguing about the idea of going to the doctor's house. The young woman then says that she should only do the work he tells her to do, and that even though she is his employee, he can't take her to his house whenever he wants, shrugging at her boss. But the man catches the woman's attention when he asks her to please help him. She then turns to the man and questions what she just heard. She asks if he just asked for her help, but the demon just stares at her, and she stares back at him. Then she turns her back to the man and messes up her hair, exhausted. Turning back, she stares at him, irritated, and orders him to do a good job in her surgery while the man just stares at her. Finally, she agrees to go to his house. At sunset, various cars were on the road, consequently causing a huge traffic jam. Someone was typing on their phone a lame excuse that their grandmother suddenly wasn't feeling well to cancel an appointment. Regretting not being able to go to the dinner they had scheduled, apologetically, she mentally apologized to a friend and her grandmother, whom she included in the lie. Then she incredulously stared at the man sitting next to her. The handsome dark-haired demon was the cause of all that lying. The young woman then asks if they are already arriving at the man's house while they were in a very beautiful and sophisticated black car. Admiring the city's sunset view, the woman says she is surprised that the young doctor is driving his car at that time, and that it would have been much faster if they had taken the bus, but the young doctor says he wouldn't go anywhere except driving his car. Not understanding, the young woman wonders if the boss doesn't like being around people. The woman then comments that the two of them had met on the subway, where the doctor says he had an accident and had to get rid of his car. In shock, the young woman asks about the man's health and if it was very serious. And the demon just says it wasn't as serious an accident as it seemed. Then the young woman looks out the window when the boss announces that they have arrived somewhere. Amazed, the woman stares at the tall tower with several yellow lights in front of her, extremely tall and magnificent with many windows. With her mouth open, the young woman admired the large place when the man asked her to hurry up. The young man's long fingers select the 72nd floor of the tall tower. Suspicious, the young woman mentally comments that she already suspected her boss's financial situation because he offered so much for her to work with him. Anxiously, she asks the young doctor how old he is. The doctor then asks how old she thinks he is, while the elevator ascends to the desired floor. The woman then says the man should be in his 20s, and this comment brings a smile to his face, who looked at her, smiling, saying they would stick with that age. When the doors opened, the young woman looked puzzled at the demon who got out of the elevator. The apartment door made a slight noise when opening it. The homeowner told the young woman to use the slippers at the door. Immediately, the young woman asked for permission to enter the house and found herself in a beautiful living room with a stunning view of the city. Curious, the young woman quickly thought about the immense fortune her boss must have. As she walked through the house, she came across something. A large, incomprehensible, but terrifying painting, where it seemed to be a man with a crown and 3 heads, with different expressions on each. Awkwardly, the young woman just stared at the large painting. The proud demon, standing in front of the woman, comments that the painting illustrates the devil that Dante described in his poems. The young woman asks what her boss means. When the curtains fluttered with the strong wind coming through the window, the man then says he is talking about Lucifer, the creature also known as the king of demons. Originally, he was the most beautiful angel and the one God trusted the most. But one day, Lucifer's heart began to turn evil, believing he was better than God and could usurp his throne, thus incurring God's wrath, which exiled him from heaven. Then the angel fell to hell. Convinced, Lucifer looks at the young woman in front of him with a slight smile on his face. Not understanding, the young woman stares at him with a confused expression, making the young woman nervous about the situation, who quickly asks if she can get a glass of water in the kitchen. The white cup was being filled by the fancy filter while the young woman waited. The woman drank her water while complaining that she hadn't seen suspicious objects around the house. Nervously, the young woman remembered when the young demon had commented that he felt good seeing blood when he looked into the girl's eyes. In the kitchen, she thought about the scary painting in her boss's living room and felt something was wrong, as she shivered at the thought that her boss might be a demon worshipper. Returning to the living room, the young woman announced her return. But the demon was no longer in the living room but in his bathroom, staring nervously at a small sink full of blood. He seemed surprised to hear his assistant call him again. Then he called the young woman to come to where he was. She seemed shocked moments later to discover that her boss was in the bathroom calling her to come to him. With small feet compared to the large men's slippers, the young woman stopped in front of the bathroom and announced that she was going to open the door. On the sink was a pool of blood. Her demon boss stared at her with a wet face. Nervously, the beautiful young woman asked what was happening there and questioned why the man was taking off his clothes, being answered that the clothes had gotten stained. The young man asked the young woman to come closer, and she promptly shook her head in refusal. Angrily, the proud demon threatened that he would pull her in if she didn't come willingly. The man then sighed tiredly and asked her to just hold his hand and keep the desired distance. The young woman then did as the man asked and held his hand, maintaining her distance. Entertained, the young man looked at the pool of blood on his sink and complained that he didn't feel desire, much less fear. As the demon had imagined, the change occurs when he makes contact with the brown-haired woman. When their eyes meet, the proud demon loses his fear, and when he touches her, the demon loses even his hunger for blood. With his hand grasped around the woman's arm, the demon pulled her against him and hugged her tightly. With red eyes, the proud demon wondered what would happen if they went beyond simple physical touches. Almost immediately, the young woman pushed him away and distanced herself from the demon. Furious, the young woman stared at him angrily and questioned why he had suddenly pulled her close. Without looking at her face, the doctor ended the night, saying that the experiment was over, staring at the man without understanding him. The young woman turned away, irritated and not understanding her boss. Being questioned where she was going, she quickly said she was going home since the experiment was over. The doctor stared at her and announced that he would take her home. Embarrassed, the young woman said she could take the subway to get home, questioning herself mentally shortly after why the doctor was treating her well. But the demon could only stare at her and watch her leave. Early the next morning at the medical clinic, the red-haired doctor greeted someone while smiling in a good mood. Suspicious, the young woman stared at the redhead in front of her and asked if the man didn't have work to do, quickly getting the response that he had already finished his tasks. Tilting her head slightly to the side and staring at the young doctor who was sitting in his usual chair, complaining that the man hadn't bothered her since the night before. When the young doctor stood up to leave the room, the redhead asked where he was going, offering to go along because he had something to tell the doctor. But before he could leave, the brown-haired young woman grabbed his hand, asking him to wait. Not understanding, the redhead just stared at the young woman who pulled him by the hand. The two then just stared at each other. Excited, the young woman commented that she had something to ask the redhead while still holding hands with the man. But quickly realizing and letting go of the doctor's hand with disdain, the girl began to voice her question when she was interrupted by the redhead, who briefly stated his name. The man grabbed the young woman's hands while correcting the pronunciation of his name, claiming his name was Mayan Shin. Not understanding, the young woman just agreed, calling him Dr. Shin. Then the young woman commented that Dr. Yu had said that they all had known each other for a long time, and the excited young redhead confirmed. But the doctor seemed puzzled upon hearing the girl question why Dr. Park didn't seem well. The young woman also said that Dr. Park had mentioned some kind of devil and claimed that the doctor might really believe in that. Slightly worried, the redhead said the young doctor might be a bit superstitious. Then the assistant also commented on the moment she almost fell in front of the doctor, but suddenly a chair appeared behind her, saving her from her fall, claiming it was strange. Nervously, the redhead asked if she was sure the chair wasn't there and if she just didn't notice it. The young woman continued, talking about several strange events, while the redhead was nervous and asking her to calm down. Curious, the young woman noted that speaking aloud only made those events seem even stranger and asked the doctor's opinion. Awkwardly, he said he wasn't sure about that. When the redhead shouted to someone that he was already coming, he quickly said goodbye to the young woman, claiming someone was calling him and that he would see her later, leaving the office in a hurry. Leaving the young woman alone and not understanding anything. Now, in the women's bathroom, disbelieving, the woman questioned everyone's behavior when questioned, saying that next time she would ask the redhead again when she heard someone saying something. two employees were complaining about someone in the bathroom, grumbling that someone must find it easy to work at the clinic. Impatient, the young woman just huffed at hearing her colleagues gossiping about another co-worker. She wished good luck to whoever the women were talking about when one of them commented that the girl only hung out with the doctors. Catching the girl's attention upon hearing her name mentioned and realizing that the women were talking about her, the women complained in disbelief about one of the doctors leaving the young woman's room even earlier. The young woman then remembered that she had heard all kinds of gossip about her in elementary school, remembering two boys who had noticed her in the classroom, and formed a small group just to talk about her. The students constantly talked about others behind their backs. The employee applied a strong red lipstick while saying she had heard that the young woman got a job there because of connections. With her head down, the young woman remembered that in school, others talked badly about people in an attempt to make them feel down. Then the brown-haired young woman inside the stall kicked the bathroom door hard, surprising the employees. While in her elementary school memory, she had thrown a book at those who were talking about her, asking if they were done talking. Claiming that she wasn't someone who just cried in such situations, she walked in the bathroom towards those who were talking about her. Confidently, the young brunette asked if she could join the conversation the three were having. On the other side of the door, someone smiled at hearing the young woman's words. Two demon doctors were listening to everything on the other side of the door. Excited, the blonde celebrated the fight that was happening. The dark-haired one was a Leviathan and the blonde a Satan. And the reason the two were always together, despite belonging to different species, was because the emotions they fed on were envy and wrath. In a game, someone had won first place. In the game's chat, there were spiteful comments. The blonde smiled, satisfied at seeing those messages, because envy leads to wrath, and that's why the two species had stayed together for a long time. And now it was no different. After the appearance of young Ina, the levels of envy and wrath at the clinic had never been so high. Of all the demons, the blonde and the dark-haired one, who were always together, were the most eager for those emotions to explode. Nervously, one of the women tried to explain herself to the brown-haired young woman. When the woman with the red lipstick claimed she hadn't said anything wrong, saying it was true that the girl hadn't been officially hired at the clinic, continuing to say that the girl only got in because of Dr. Park, irritating the young woman, who mentally retorted the insults. The young woman firmly grasped her yellow phone, quickly approaching the woman who now had her back to her, calling her name when she was right behind, and asking angrily if she was done talking. Startled, the short-haired woman backed away from the young woman behind her. Disturbed, the young woman asked if the employee thought she liked Mr. Park, when she quickly extended her phone for the three to see, and showed them something that left them astonished. On the phone was a photo of a handsome man at the beach, where the girls said the man was handsome, and upon seeing a full-body photo, they noticed the man's height. Juhan Kang was a model gaining fame worldwide. Smiling, the young woman said that the man in the photos was the type of man she liked, shocking the other three women. Then asking the opinion of the woman with the red lipstick about the man, looking at him in the photos. The woman stated that the young man seemed beautiful, and the curly-haired woman agreed, shaking the woman's hand and complimenting her good taste. Still happy, the brunette asked if the employee wanted to see more photos of the man, and left the bathroom smiling. After handing a small piece of paper to the women, the three stared at the door from which the woman they had been badmouthing minutes earlier had left, wondering if they had gotten the wrong idea about her. And enchanted, one of the employees asked what the name of the handsome model the young woman had shown them was. The black-haired woman, not understanding, stated that indeed, young Ina is a strange person. Not understanding, the handsome blonde commented that the wrath of the three employees had disappeared. The other commented that their envy had also dissipated. Tired, the young woman huffed as she left the bathroom. And looking ahead, she came across a tall man in a white coat. Dr. Park stared at her, bored. When he asked why the woman hadn't run away from the employees, the young woman then realized that the doctor had heard the entire conversation. Seriously, the doctor said he was the only one who hired her and that the young woman hadn't seduced him. Awkwardly, the brown-haired young woman began to explain her reasons, saying that the rumors circulating in the clinic could affect the young doctor. The man just stared at his employee, listening to her explanation, thinking to himself that the young woman was once again worrying about him. Then the demon wondered who should be worrying about whom in that situation. The boss then said that the young woman now had permission to leave. The young woman entered the room but noticed something inside. The two doctors from the previous day were inside the room, staring at her after noticing her presence. Smiling, they commented on the incident that had happened earlier. With a disdainful expression, she asked if they had also heard about that incident, being told that the young woman should deal with the employees if it happened again. But the devils didn't imagine that it would be a single incident. That would become the beginning of everything. The redhead complained of being very hungry. When Inna suggested that he go eat something, with a blank look, the man said he couldn't eat because of the beautiful woman in front of him who looked at him without understanding. Because after that incident, all the rumors about the young woman in the company died down. Two employees were again commenting on the young assistant, but the short-haired woman clarified to the employees that nothing was happening between the assistant and the doctors, and that it wasn't nice to talk about others behind their backs, making the two feel bad for their comments. That incident ended up disrupting all the negative emotions that was spread throughout the clinic and making them disappear completely from the place. The young woman returned to work again. When she passed by the reception and caught the attention of the employee there, the employee then called out to the young lady, and with a beautiful smile, wished her a good day. At first, the young woman had no reaction, but after that, she smiled very happily at the employee's greeting. Then all the negative social emotions disappeared from the place. That's why the devils were suffering from hunger. In shock, the redhead found it strange that an emotion like greed had completely disappeared from the place, and again complained of hunger, having his attention caught by the brown-haired young woman, who asked if they had reduced the doctor's salary to pay hers. The redhead huffed in disbelief at the thought of the young woman beside him. He stood up happily, realizing that the woman was worried about his salary and claimed he could eat her right there. Then being stared at with fierce eyes because of his statement, and very scared, he affirmed that he wouldn't do that, realizing the extremely angry look of the doctor who was at the door, watching the situation. With his head down, he announced his departure from the office. Frightened by the return of Dr. Lucifer, the blonde demon shouted about his great hunger, being stared at by the other demons, then pointing to the demon Shin, who was on the floor, claiming that the demon was already half dead. With a blood bag in his hand, Shin affirmed that he was reaching his limit and that even drinking blood, he couldn't taste anything. Desperate, the blonde shouted that the devils needed to take action and do something. Tired, the sensible dark-haired one asked what they could do since the situation had been the same since that occasion. Biting his lollipop fiercely, the demon of wrath said there was something they could do. Inspired, the young blonde looked at something while affirming it was time for them to take action. The sun illuminated the sky with several white clouds, when someone stepped out of a red car and onto the ground with a black leather boot. The four demons seemed excited as they looked at what was in front of them. The redhead said it had been a long time since they had gone to see a movie, while someone asked to hurry up because they were hungry. However, someone caught the men's attention. Ina commented on why they were going by car if it was only a 10-minute walk. Convinced, the mammon complained about the handsome appearance of the four men and that if they walked down the street, they would attract too much attention. Impatiently, the young woman retorted the comment. When the handsome demon Lucifer got out of the car with extreme charm, the redhead thanked someone while sitting in a dark place. When he said someone was spilling all the drink, flushed from the drink, young Ina said it was better to order even more alcoholic beverages. Then she noticed something on the black table with various foods on its surface. Also flushed, the redhead asked for a second to finish his drink, but soon realized the drink wasn't on the table. The redhead questioned where his drink that Beelzebub had made was. When someone mentioned they put it there, hiccuping right after speaking, the demons then noticed something. The young woman was acting strange, and when asked if she had taken the drink that Beelzebub prepared, visibly drunk, she asked for another round. Suddenly, Jaeyoon was thrown against the grey wall. Looking ahead, she found herself facing the demon Lucifer, his eyes exuding anger, speaking harshly that he wanted the antidote. Nervous, Beelzebub with brown hair asserted that his ability was to prepare the drinks and that he didn't have an antidote, and that Demon Park was aware of this. Jaeyoon is a demon who seduces people through his pheromones, thus having the ability to inject these pheromones into liquids through his hands. And when humans consume these liquids, they will have the same reaction as consuming a drug. However, for a demon, it would be just like consuming any alcoholic beverage without such strong effects. Quickly, someone in black clothes ran up grey stairs. Demon Park nervously stared at something in front of him. Looking slightly up, the man saw an open door with a sign above indicating an emergency exit. Quickly, He opened the door with the emergency exit sign and stared at something in front of him. And there was the young woman with curly brown hair, with a beautiful smile and flushed cheeks from the extra strong drink. Smiling, the young woman asked how the demon had discovered she was there. Angry and with clenched fists, the man reminded the drunk woman in front of him that he had said he would make her pay if he found her, ordering the woman to come down from where she was, but being surprised immediately as the woman hugged him tightly with a beautiful smile on her face. Surprised and without reaction, the demon just let the small drunk woman hug him. The man looked at the one still hugging him tightly. He wrapped one of his arms around the girl and considered hugging her back. The young woman sniffed the man she was hugging and commented that he had come from so far just to see her. With eyes shining in wonder, the young drunk woman looked into the demon's face and called him Juhan, returning to hug the demon, whose real name was Hyunshin. A black-haired man was fiddling with a cell phone with a view of the Eiffel Tower in a sophisticated room. The dark-haired man, with piercings in his ear and an X tattoo just below the ear, wore a white shirt. He was sending messages on his cell phone, asking what Ina was doing at that time, and complaining that the young woman hadn't replied yet, even though it was already morning in Korea. The man lay on a couch after putting down the cell phone and realizing that the young woman was also not sleeping at her friend's house. Then the cell phone vibrated, receiving a notification. And quickly, the tattooed man got up to grab the cell phone in his hand and look at the notification, not paying attention to the drink on the coffee table in front of him or the beautiful view of the tower. The young man just called someone, saying he had finished his photo session and asking to be put on the next flight to Korea. Then being asked the reason. A white plane flew in the dark sky of Paris while the young man said something was bothering him. Under the sunlight, a large residence shone. The sunlight shone on the white curtains of the place. Calmly, the young intern was sleeping, and soon she woke up, bothered by something. She got up briefly and sat on the bed, complaining of a severe headache and asking what time it was. Yawning tiredly, she thought about how thirsty she was at the moment. She asked what happened the night before because it was the first time she'd blacked out after getting drunk. However, when she tried to get out of bed, she finally noticed a handcuff attached to her wrist. Not understanding, she stared at who was on the other side of the chain. Then she looked ahead with a calm expression. Smiling, she realized something very important. That beautiful, totally sophisticated, and elegant place, surrounded by 5 doctors who were now sleeping peacefully, certainly wasn't her room. Realizing this, she froze in shock. And it was inevitable not to hear the shrill scream that the young woman made. Waking everyone in the room, the young woman began asking many important questions, such as why the boys were sleeping without shirts. The redhead was the first to wish her good morning, being responded to with a scream from the young woman saying that wasn't relevant at that moment. Someone commented that it was Dr. Kim's house, and the young woman, scared, said she didn't have money to give the men, realizing that's why she was there and handcuffed. Desperate, the young woman looked at her phone and found several missed calls from someone named Juhan. Scared, the young woman stared at the one who was sleeping next to her, now catching her attention, seeing her boss with an extremely tired face. When the man ordered that from that moment on, the young woman would never go out drinking again. In shock, she didn't understand why, especially since her memories of the night before were still hazy. The young woman asked if she had done something wrong yesterday, while the demon stared at her with a saddened face. Then the young demon remembered the moment when the woman called him by a name that wasn't his, shocking the man and leaving him with a disbelieving expression. He then remembered that when they first met, the young woman had rejected his kiss because she already liked another man. The woman who was hugging him asked if the man she was waiting for had come to get her, making the demon she was hugging grit his teeth in anger. And then he calmed down, just hugging the young woman back and confirming her question. Finally, the demon asked if they could go home. He then picked up the woman in his arms, who was now sleeping serenely. The other demons approached them, asking where the young woman had been and how Lucifer had found her. Then the doctor asked where she lived, but no one knew the answer. While discussing where to go, Demon Park just watched the others talk. He then seemed to have an idea and suggested they take her to Beelzebub's house. Awkwardly, the young woman stared at her boss lying next to her and said she couldn't remember anything after she started drinking. However, she trembled when someone said she had caused a commotion, because they almost had an accident due to her causing a fight with another driver in front of them, which caused the car to briefly lose control. This was why she was handcuffed to her boss, so she wouldn't do anything stupid again. They also said that at one point, the girl ran out of the restaurant and it took a long time to find her. Distressed, the young woman lowered her head and apologized because she couldn't remember anything from the night before, being questioned by the boss if she really didn't remember anything. When the chain was lightly pulled, so that her boss could lean on his elbow while lying down and ask her again if she didn't remember anything. Sadly, the young woman confirmed she didn't remember anything. The man stared at her, his face supported by his elbow, and told her to forget it. With a beautiful, happy expression, young Kim appeared at the bedroom door, asking if the little drunk girl was awake so she could eat before leaving. Kim asked for Demon Yu's help before leaving the room. The young lady reminded her boss about the handcuff key so she could go to the bathroom to wash her face. The man finally remembered the key he had forgotten and quickly created a new one behind his back, out of the woman's sight. He turned his attention to the woman in front of him and asked her to extend her arm. But he found the beautiful woman admiring something in front of her. She was looking at the envious demon's body and admiring it. All the demons heard the woman's thoughts, praising the Leviathan's anatomy and calling him a model. The young woman said the demon in front of her was wonderful, unaware that all the other demons were listening to her thoughts and paying attention to them. The Leviathan smiled, pleased with what he heard, and finished putting on his shirt. The demon called her while she looked at him, enchanted, and responded to his call. Then he asked if there was something specific she would like to eat that morning. Lucifer's wrath was incomprehensible to him, but still, he was already angry about the situation and easily broke the key in his fury. The young woman responded to the Leviathan that she would cook while the redhead looked at her in shock at what he heard, and the dark-haired man seemed even more pleased. Excited, the young woman remembered the key, but her happy face completely changed when the boss said he didn't have a key. He then showed his large white hand without a key or anything else. With an innocent expression, he complained that he couldn't find the key that was there before. Terrified, the brown-haired woman stared at the demon because she was now stuck with the boss, who claimed to have lost the key. Smiling, the boss said there was no solution and that the two of them would stay like that until the end of the day. The young woman with brown hair and white clothes asked her boss to stay outside. When she entered a room and cursed all possible names inside the place, the boss then stood in front of the door, and the young woman tried to move away from the door to at least reach the products on the bathroom sink, stretching as far as she could to reach a small beige bottle. Finally, managing to grab the product in her hands, the young woman celebrated. But the object fell to the bathroom floor, far from the limit the chain allowed. The door where the man was waiting opened, and she irritably called the demon to come in, walking together with the boss to pick up the object from the floor. Then she managed to reach the object, and amazed, she celebrated her great victory with a big smile. Turning to the demon, she said she had gotten the exfoliant and that now the man could leave. While she calmly pulled the product into her hand, the demon stared at her. It was then that she realized her mistake in reasoning. Smiling maliciously, the man said he was disturbing the woman and announced that he would leave, making the young woman tremble. The dark-haired man turned with a sinister expression, and the young woman thought he was the devil. Diabolically, the demon warned that if the young woman wanted him to stay, she would have to ask politely, making the young woman panic as he was leaving the bathroom and grab his clothes firmly, with the hand that had exfoliant, only realizing afterward that she had stained her boss's shirt. The tap water flowed abundantly when the devil offered a towel to the woman cleaning her face, who immediately dried her wet face, pausing to turn to her handcuffed companion and asking the irritated being beside her if he wanted to clean his shirt. As they walked down the stairs, the two argued whether the exfoliant accident was intentional or not. After descending the stairs, the young woman simply asked the man to find the key he had lost. The young woman then spotted Dr. Kim, who was drinking something suspicious and was startled by her call. Quickly hiding what he was drinking, the nervous brown-haired man was surprised by the woman's presence. And nervously smiling, he said that breakfast wasn't ready yet, telling the young woman to look around the house while the demon of gluttony hid a cup of blood behind him. What he didn't realize was that he had drops of blood on his lips, and the innocent girl noticed it. Awkwardly, the man covered his mouth, but it was too late. Curious, the girl asked questions about what the doctor had eaten and said again that his mouth was red. Annoyed, Lucifer cursed his friend while creating a cup in his hands. A cup with a red liquid inside that he dropped on the floor. to get the attention of the two beside him and get the brown-haired man out of that situation. The two stared at the cup with the red liquid spilled on the floor. Frightened, they questioned young Park. The woman took her boss's hands to look at them and asked if he was okay. Then the girl pulled the man to go clean the stain on the demon's pants. As they left, Lucifer looked at the man behind them, staring at him with a deadly and silent gaze, making the gluttonous demon fearful. The brown-haired man scratched his head, imagining it could be worse, and that the young woman wouldn't be easily fooled since she couldn't be controlled by the demon's powers. Sighing in relief, the boy thought about how the girl made the great proud demon listen to her and that she was impressive in many ways. Red water dripped from someone's black pants. The girl soaking the devil's pants complained that the stains wouldn't come out and that the man's pants were drenched. Suspicious, the young woman began to say that she thought it would be better if the man took off his pants. Smiling maliciously, the demon Lucifer sighed and put his hands on the edge of his pants. He smiled triumphantly, claiming he had no problem taking them off and jokingly commenting that he thought they were moving too fast, leaving the brown-haired girl completely embarrassed. She immediately shouted, saying she meant that he should take them off later, but she pulled his arm so hard that they both fell. The man grabbed her by the waist as they stared at each other. The demon protected the woman from the fall by placing himself underneath her before hitting the ground. The loud noise made the small shower, still running, fall to the floor, spraying water all over the bathroom. The girl fell on top of her boss in the bathtub. Desperate, the young woman got up and continued to sit on the man without realizing it because she was too worried about the demon. Afraid he might have a concussion from the big fall, she said they should go to a hospital, but the demon just stared at her. Someone said they weren't okay because many things were happening lately that weren't right at all. Worried, the woman asked the man below her if she should call an ambulance. The demon finally spoke, but it was too vague for the young woman on top of him to understand. Then the man commented that the woman's clothes were getting wet. The young woman said that didn't matter and asked again if the demon was okay. The man said he wasn't sure while the woman held his chest, and he admitted he didn't know if he was really okay at that moment. To ensure you don't miss the unfolding of this romance, give a gentle tap on the notification bell, and I see you on the next tale.